Her name was Nakam, but that always invited too many questions, so she just told everyone to call her Angie. She always smiled a bit inside at her little joke. Angie was short for Angela, and she was, after all, an angelic being. She wasn't a seraphim or a cherubim or an archangel. If one had to classify her, Angie was what you might call a guardian angel. She wasn't, however, assigned to one particular person. She went wherever she was needed, whenever she was needed. Angie knew that the human form assigned to her caused the people around her to think of her as female. She was bemused by humans' inclination to be so binary. Designating her as a female was both inadequate and incorrect. Even though angels encompass both feminine and masculine characteristics, they aren't defined or bound by gender. For her purposes on Earth, Angie had been given a feminine form, so the name people knew her by matched the expectations that went with her appearance. While it amused her, she certainly didn't dwell on it. Angie wasn't what you would call a classically beautiful woman, at least by 20th or 21st century Western definitions. It wasn't that she was unattractive. She simply had the ability to blend in and not draw attention to herself. She had raven tresses that fell to the middle of her back, through which a streak of burnished bronze-red strands flashed. Most observers assumed it was a highlight from some salon, but it was a naturally occurring phenomenon, if you can call angels natural. She had glistening, wide eyes that were deep and penetrating. Depending on the light and what was going through her mind, the color of her eyes varied from almost black to green to deep blue. And sometimes people swore that they saw a flicker of flame in her eyes. Those flashing eyes were a reflection of her true name, Naham, the Avenger. Because of her tawny skin and features, most people assumed she was of Middle Eastern descent. And although she was of smaller stature, she stood a mere 5'2". She exuded a hidden strength that people overlooked at their own peril. She wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked down the street, but if she sat next to you and engaged you in conversation, you couldn't look away. And more than one man had described her as mysterious. Even though Angie possessed angelic powers, she was restrained in her use of those powers. She never initially revealed herself as angelic, and when she did use the powers at her disposal, it was never done in a public way. Perhaps the Father, in his wisdom, had foreseen that some of his human creatures would try to turn an angel into some kind of a freak show. After all, even Jesus, during his time on earth, had to deal with the circus of people demanding signs and wonders, with the result that they often missed the big message. So while some people could sense that Angie was different, they couldn't quite put their finger on what made her special. Perhaps it was to her advantage that Angie wasn't the typical angel next door of movies and television. She could hide, more or less, in plain sight. And yet there was a hint of steel in her, reminiscent of Stieg Larsson's Lisbeth Sanders. She could be easily overlooked at first glance, but she was extremely dangerous. And unlike the girl with the dragon tattoo, she was not driven by anger, although she was, in fact, far more dangerous. Angie knew exactly who she was and why she roamed the earth. She wasn't on the planet to dispense platitudes and pleasantries. She also wasn't around to simply offer the comfort of kind words or promises yet to be fulfilled. She was a different kind of angel, a kick-ass angel who meted out justice and deliverance without anger or regret on behalf of those who weren't strong enough to resist on their own.